Guys, welcome to the Dominator here on Crossover Week on Player Profiler. I am not Billy Muzio. I'm Theo Gremminger filling in for him. I'm happy to be filling in for Matt and Billy. They put out tremendous work here with the Dominator. I'm truly honored by being able to sit in this seat today. And I'm joined by two guys that I'm friends with, but I also have a great deal of respect for. Mike Schopp and Adam Krautwurst are putting out tremendous content on the Deep End Fantasy Football Podcast that you can find right here in the Roto Underworld on Tuesday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And these guys, I respect you guys both as analysts. Mike is, very well known for being one of the preeminent voices in the Buffalo region when it comes to the Buffalo Bills. But I respect both of you guys in terms of your ability to play high stakes fantasy football. These guys are drafting every single night. And if it's not every single night, it's at least a few times a week. Mike, you recently took a trip to Alaska. How many drafts were you able to complete while you were still in the United States, but it's, pretty foreign for the US?
None.
Okay, good for you.
So,
Mike.
I wanted to. And when we got to one of the ports, I guess there was a point in time that the ship was docked and we were in Alaska. I'm like, okay, they have Underdog here. Let's go. But I still couldn't do it. I was too close to international waters or something. I could get on the app, but I still couldn't. Yeah, it was. But I picked, I've tried to compensate here since I've been home.
Yeah, so. you got to go full Chad Schroeder, and you got to have triple screens of multiple drafts and going on at one time. I think we're nearing that point. But it's almost August here, guys. This is the time to draft, and another co-host of the Deep End is Adam Krautwurst. Adam is a extremely successful high stakes player on multiple formats. He's done quite well in the FFPC as well as the FFWC, and he's very active. A lot of skin in the game. How are your drafts going this year, Adam?
The drafts are going well. I hope. I haven't really gotten into like the big ones yet. I've done one FFPC main so far. Right now, I'm just doing a bunch of the mid stakes, just kind of biding my time for August to roll around. But when I'm not drafting, this is my 5th show this week, guys. I'm running out of clothes to wear. I'm wearing like a Jordan PSG soccer jersey right now because I got nothing.
I mean, Adam is attempting to flex his Jordan PSG soccer jersey, guys. That's a flex.
It's a flex because it doesn't fit. It's flexing. Okay. It's screaming off of me right now.
Who's Jordan?
Yeah, exactly.
There you go, guys. So I will say that this is a really fun year. We're going to talk about a lot of deep strategy things, but we've had every year fantasy football kind of adjusts to last season and kind of the values that are presented, and sometimes it over adjusts. This year we have the combination of extreme wide receiver enthusiasm with quarterbacks being pushed up. So for me, I like drafting from pretty much any spot now. There's certain spots where there's going to be challenges to every spot in terms of the later rounds, and I think we're going to get to some of that. But generally, where have been your favorite spot to draft from, Mike?
I would say 4 or 5, considering Tyreek Hill and Cooper Kupp fairly close to interchangeable, and starting that way. And then really you just have all the flexibility you want. You could do, thinking more of Underdog, you could do like last night. I went Hill, Devontae Smith, Hurts. So you can play with quarterbacks there. You can get yourself to Mark Andrews in that spot in round 3 pretty easily. And the running backs, although this has changed a little bit, I think in the last week, but for a minute, Henry, Jacobs, Hall, Stevenson were kind of like all there. And now there's been a little bit, to some extent or another, of negative news on some of those guys. And Henry kind of went the other way with the Hopkins signing. So it's a little bit of a different layout. But I would say 4 or 5 or 11, 12 are my favorites.
How about you, Adam? Where do you like drafting from?
Yeah, I can make it work anywhere, I think, but I'm getting kind of used to drafting at the end. I feel like every time I'm drafting later on. And if I don't have a late pick, it's an early one, but it's super flex. So that, changes everything. But I'm okay with later on. There's a lot of guys I like at the end of the first round, early second round. Like I'm very high on Garrett Wilson. I'm very high on Saquon Barkley, Bijan, I'm fine with there. So I think I can, I'm on Ra. I can make the first 2 rounds really work really well. And then if I can get one of the running backs I like to follow me towards the end of the third, like if I can get Jahmyr Gibbs at the end of the third, I love every start to my draft. And, I could always go Mark Andrews in the early second in these FFPC drafts and then go Lamar in the fourth. So I'm starting to make the 3-4 turn happen a little bit, especially if I can get the running backs to fall there. And so to be able to start with the first 4 picks like I like, and then the rest of the draft just kind of, it's, you can reach for guys later on, and the value doesn't really matter as much.
Yeah, no, I'm sort of with you. I've really enjoyed picking from the back end. And last night I had a 101. We're going to talk a little bit about 101 strategy, because getting the 101 is a really nice thing to get exposure to a Justin Jefferson, or the ability to take pretty much anybody who you want if you want to be contrarian. But there are some challenges to ways to maximize that. And that's going to be the first subject we get into after we hear from our sponsors.
Let's take a moment to talk about Underdog Fantasy. Now, many of you have already signed up. Thousands have signed up from PlayerProfiler already over the years. Underdog has supported us since 2020. Much of what you see on PlayerProfiler is because of Underdog, because of their support. Get the Underdog app, plug in that promo code Underworld. I used to play Underdog just for the best ball drafts. I mean, the best ball drafts are amazing. These draft rooms fill so quickly, and you can win life-changing money. You want to take advantage of all the sleepers we talk about on this show? Well, what better place than in an Underdog draft room to do that? And I recommend taking your Underdog play to the next level by diving into their NFL pick'ems. It's important to correlate those NFL pick'ems. You can pick both the quarterbacks and the wide receivers to exceed expectations. Correlate them, and you can 5x your payout. Bada bing, bada boom. Underdog Fantasy, the promo code is Underworld. For an instant deposit match up to $100, Underdog is the truest friend of the Underworld.
Welcome back to the Dominator. I'm Theo Gremminger, joined by Mike Schopp and Adam Krautwurst. Guys, Underdog, Mike, I know you're constantly on that phone of yours. I was telling Adam that I'm in so many of these slow Underdog drafts. It's absolutely disgusting right now. My whole life revolves around putting in my picks without timing out. When I go to bed, I have to put in like 8 picks. And then when I wake up in the morning, I always seem to have like 45 minutes to go on a number of others, sometimes 15 minutes to go, which is a true rush if you've never experienced waking up to being OTC like that. I had this argument with Billy Muzio, my co-host on First Class Fantasy. Do you guys like slow drafts? Because I know some people don't like the whole slow draft notion. Billy is anti-slow drafts, and he's a West Coast-based guy. You guys are both East Coast-based, so I guess we're on the normal East Coast time zone, so we don't have that concern. But Mike, are you doing fast, normal speed underdogs, or are you slow in it?
I like the idea of slow drafts, but I don't want to do them for $25 or less. Like for me, what I want from a slow draft is I played in the Bulldog, which was 500, and I liked having the 6 hours so I could really sort of process and figure out what I want to do, main event, stuff like that. Okay. But this is going to sound kind of obnoxious. I think you guys are probably the same way. I like the fast draft because I think I can do it. I feel like I can manipulate and be flexible and move around and just whatever. Those are all the same things. I think I can do well in a fast draft generally. So for Best Ball Mania, that's where I'm at. And I guess I'm a little bit jealous, but I'm not waking up to 10 leagues where I'm up.
I told Adam that's the problem. I started these the slow puppy, which is like a $5 one, so I have to max it. So I'm having to do so many of them. It's like scratching off a bunch of $5 tickets at 7-Eleven a little bit, Adam. But it still is a lot of fun. It's a lifestyle, guys, really more than anything. And Mike brings up a big point that Billy Muzio had, that he feels like in a slow draft, a really good drafter like yourself might lose an edge, because it's allowing somebody, instead of having to make that OTC decision with a clock ticking down, it gives me time to really look at the board, really be methodical, check out the week correlation for week 17, all that good stuff. So Adam, where are you at? Do you lose an edge in a slow draft?
Yeah, I definitely lose an edge. I mean, even with a 6 hours a pick, like if I'm on the clock when I'm mowing my lawn, like I will, yes, Evan Silva, I mow my own lawn. I will stop And like, I got 6 hours. Doesn't matter. I'm going to sit on this. I'm going to grab some lemonade and I'm going to make this pick before I continue mowing my lawn because I have to make the pick. Nobody likes slow drafts. That's why they do 95 of them at the same time. It's not a slow draft. You're on the clock the entire day. Like,
So for me, I know we're all dads over here, but my kids are a little bit younger. So for me, it's sometimes I feel like it's like the times I'd want to draft the live draft in the evening. Like I can't do the 7 o'clock drafts. I can't do the 7:30. And then, doing these 10 o'clock drafts, you're all ramped up. You can't fall asleep. So I do it kind of out of necessity, the slow drafts. I did a slow main event, Adam, that turned out pretty well. I got Javonte Williams super late, and then we had the positive news. So that worked out well for me. I even snuck in Adam's DMs a slight consigliere moment to pick his brain on a pick, but we'll get into that. But I want to.
If I may just add one thing, I'm also physically incapable of letting the clock run down. Like if I'm on the golf course, I'm constantly looking over my shoulder to see if someone's waiting to hit. I just never want to be in the way. And so I can't even control it. Like yesterday, I was on the air on WGR and it came to be my pick on drafters, and that's 8 hours. And I'm like, Ritter. And then 5 minutes later, Joe Burrow went down. Like, why didn't I just wait 10 minutes and pick Simeon or something? Like, just why the rush? But I cannot let it tick down even at all. If I'm up, I'm picking in like 5 minutes if I'm able.
Yeah, it's like the opposite extreme. Some people have use clock warfare. There's some friends of ours who they're friends of ours that we respect that I know for a fact when they're on like a turn will use 12 hours just to screw with people. It's really horrible.
I can't do it.
It's tough.
We did the Scott Fish Bowl, and it took we did 10 rounds in 2 hours live, and then it took us like 3 weeks to get through 10 more rounds. It was just like,
I got auto twice on the cruise in that draft, by the way.
Oh, brutal.
Shout out to the people not providing enough Wi-Fi for Mike Schopp on the cruise to get his.
It's $26 a day per device. I just decided to take a pass on that since half the time we were going to be on land.
That's right. That's right. So, guys, I want to get into it. The 101 is Justin Jefferson. There's a couple times where maybe if you get several 101s, you would go contrarian. Just as a devil's advocate, Mike, if you're if you're doing 10 main events, and let's say you get 5 101s, how often are you going Justin Jefferson?
4. I think that's right to not. Last year, Adam and I were together with the Draft Sharks guys, and I pointed out I was always getting the 101 in Best Ball Mania, and I was only picking Jonathan Taylor. And Jared Smoller looked at me and was like, well, why wouldn't you vary that? I was like, I said, good point. There's another sort of a mental block, I guess, where I feel like I can't resist the value, and he's the value, so that's what I've got to do. But I think Chase is close enough to Jefferson where it's no stretch to put him there. There's no one else I would pick first, but I'm happy pretty much with either guy. I like getting second and getting whoever the number one doesn't pick.
Me too. I love both those guys this year, and I think it's a little different than a running back where, like the 101 wide receivers we've seen historically, Adam, like when Antonio Brown was going at the 101, like you get the value return. There's a little less injury risk for the wide receiver position, and also you have the unknown upside drafter can't be like, whoa, Justin Jefferson, he can't grow as a player because like he's 23 and he's a stud. But Adam, how many times would you break? So Adam, you draft a lot. Let's say it's same question as Mike, but for your case, if you do 20 main events, how many of those would you convert over to Justin Jefferson's if you get 5 101s?
It might be 4 and 1 or 3 and 2 for me because like Mike said, I think it's close enough with Jamar Chase, and even like if I did a 3 and 2, it might be Cooper Kupp as the other one because I just think that outside of injury, and I know he's suffered those in the past. Like he's 30. He's amazing. Him and Stafford he was better last year per game than he was the year before. And they just asked him again, like, hey, is there any rust between you two? He's like, Cooper Kupp's like, it's the weirdest thing. Like, it's like we never stopped playing. There's no second weapon there outside of Higbee. Kupp could finish the wide receiver one this year for sure.
Mike, just very quickly, OTC, Tyreek Hill or Cooper Kupp?
Kupp. Last night I went Hill because I'm at 17% on Kupp and was 5 on Hill. So really, I'm at the point now where I'm looking at those numbers.
Yeah, I think for me, I love them both. I would have them probably very, very close in terms of how great player they are. But like Adam brought up the target competition, there's no Jalen Waddle on the Rams. And I think there is an outside chance that like they self-scout and they say, we got Jalen Waddle like 115, 110 targets last year. Let's get him back up to 140, even if it means Tyreek Hill goes down to 155. And I think that's a little bit of a danger, even though I'm getting upset about 155 targets with Tyreek Hill. So what are we really doing? So let's talk about the 101. You take Justin Jefferson at the 101, guys. Let's go FFPC right now. 24-25 overall right now. It's Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. You also have potential for Chris Olave and Devonta Smith. Then Josh Jacobs, Ramondre Stevenson. Those are generally being selected. There's like the Tony Pollard at the 2-3 turn is completely gone. And 6 weeks ago, we could have talked about him falling there a little bit. Mike brought up the fact that the Derrick Henry is starting to see his ADP rise as we've added the extra weapon in DeAndre Hopkins, and the potential for Henry just to smash again is very clear. Where are you at? What's the way to maximize this, Adam? And what's a way where you could get a little bit creative with your build? Because you don't want to have the exact same start as every other 101 drafter.
Right. And man, I'm looking at the Mojo ADP right now for main events. It's got Kelce at the 101 right here. If I'm looking at
I'm looking at the for the Fantasy Pros Championship.
Okay.
For the last 3 days.
Gotcha. I'm looking at the main event, the 101 is to Travis Kelce, in case anybody cares. So that's pretty interesting. But so like you said, ADPs are changing. Camp news is happening. Kelce and Jefferson still the same kind of idea. It's not a running back, right? So what are we doing at the 2-3 turn? If we're doing main events, we're doing higher stake stuff, I'm going to get my guys. Normally it's running backs there, to be honest, but man, a lot of question marks now. Josh Jacobs, is he even going to come? And hey, if you're going Jefferson, Josh Jacobs, 2 week 13 buys to start your draft. Don't know if you want to do that. If you want to go Hawkinson, if you go Jefferson, Hawkinson for the stack, now you've got 3 week 13 buys. So there's a lot of week 13 buys this year that you got to kind of worry about. That's the first round of the playoffs for the FFPC tournaments. But normally I'm going running backs. I like Breece Hall. If Dalvin Cook doesn't sign there, I love Breece Hall, and I love Jahmyr Gibbs. It's a higher than his ADP, but he's not making it back around to me at the 4-5. So I could see myself going Ramondre, Hall, Gibbs, 3 of those guys. And that's if nobody falls, right? A lot of times stuff happens. You could see a Derrick Henry fall. I'm fine with him there. You could see a Jalen Taylor. Yeah, that's right. Taylor, even though his ADP is a little higher than that. But yeah, you'll get main event drafts where people go get their guys. And if they don't like Taylor, he could certainly fall. So I like, long story, I like kind of back-to-back running backs there to go with Jefferson or Chase, because those guys are like having a receiver and a half at the receiver position. So you don't need to load up on receiver after you draft them.
How about you, Mike? What's some strategies you would take after you start Jefferson when you're following up at that 2-3 turn?
So I shouldn't take Mahomes and Hurts at ADP. Is that right? I shouldn't do that?
Correct.
Okay.
I don't want to deter you. It's an interesting question because I'll take a step back here, Mike, because you bring up last year about Jonathan Taylor at the 1. Jonathan, it actually set up really well last year. And Adam, you'll remember this. You take Jonathan Taylor at the 1, or, if it was a McCaffrey start, whatever, then you would get access to Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, and at the time, Michael Pittman was right in that range. So it set up naturally for you to be able to get 2 wide receiver 1s with your RB1 overall. It was a very structured build. Now the wide receivers you would consider are Devonta Smith and T. Higgins, who are both wide receiver 2s on their own teams, a little less of an edge. So, Mike, I think that I don't want to talk you out of those quarterbacks because at least they provide an edge.
Well, you could go Smith Hurts and not get cheated if you did that. But
Mike, did you mean both quarterbacks to take them both? Yeah, that's what I thought you meant. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
You wouldn't take both. I would recommend not taking both.
Do not do that, guys.
What are you trying to do there? Really, the build is kind of the point. You have a good look at tight end this year at 4-5. The way Kittle gets drafted, or Pitts, or Hawkinson, like that's still going to be, maybe not Hawkinson by end of 4, but you're going to have better tight end options there than if you're drafting at the end. We did this on Sunday night in the Fantasy Pros. Like, we talked each other into Andrews in the first round because, like, you're not getting watch the ship chasing guys now. They're not getting their tight end in the first. They're not there at the back end unless they reach, and that's hard to live with sometimes. So at 1, at the turn there, you might just have to sort of pick one of those running backs, Stevenson, Jacobs, Hall, maybe, where you feel like you're reading between the lines in the media. Yeah, it's not so bad. There is a full workload there. I don't believe Jacobs is going to hold out, whatever, and pick one of them. And then maybe a receiver, if it's Higgins and Burrow comes back, or, someone else, Olave, that can be fine too. Maybe there's a stack opportunity. So, one of each, or even 2 receivers. I really don't want 2 running backs by pick 25 though.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's the dead zone has moved, but it's still dead zone-y. I like Adam's idea of pushing Jahmyr Gibbs up there. Quickly, not on the show sheet, where will Jahmyr Gibbs be selected when we draft on Friday in Vegas after opening game? Because that one is like, Adam, you might be getting him behind ADP based on that potential game flow against Kansas City in an up-tempo game where there's going to be plenty of passing opportunity for Detroit. Where do you think he'll end up with the irrational exuberance of the Friday drafter?
Yeah, and that's another good point. These Lions and Chiefs guys in these tournaments, you get the free look at them for that Thursday night game. I need someone smarter than me to make a spreadsheet that shows me the value of taking players that you get to see on that Thursday night game. It's 1 week, I get it, but there's value into being able to bench them or start them, whether after watching them play. I need to know what that is. Somebody smarter than me. But go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Just like no, never mind. You take it. I was going to start to answer the question, but it's not my turn.
I think he's going to go probably closer because honestly, Jacobs, the longer he holds out, he's going to drop. Dalvin Cook's probably going to sign in New York. You might have more info on that, Theo. You're down there. He's going to.
I think it's going to happen. I think he's going to sign with the Jets.
So Breece Hall's going to drop significantly. There's word on this, words coming out too that the Patriots, they want to add another back. They want to, they don't want to give Ramondre Stevenson all the workload there. So you're having all these backs that are going there pushed down. Jahmyr Gibbs might get pushed up. Najee Harris might get pushed up. So a lot of this stuff's going to happen. I think Gibbs ends up at the top of the 3rd round for sure. And I do want to push back a little bit on the not taking 2 running backs part. I think I get it, but we're also getting running backs that for the last 20 years would be going at the 1-2 turn. Because remember, it used to be 12 picks in the first round, 9 of them were running backs. Now you're getting running back 9 at the 2-3 turn. So I think that there is, you go receiver or tight end, whatever, running back, and then you just ignore me in that type of build. I just ignore running back for the next 6 or 7 rounds, get some elite tight ends, elite quarterbacks, stuff like that. Herbert's dropping past where he should be. And so that's a build that you can do, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Adam, about and I highly recommend my press coverage with Josh Larkey, where we tried to really identify the new dead zone. But Adam's right. Like if we took a time machine, if we popped in the DeLorean and when we went back to like 2019, you'd see 10 running backs where RB10 would be drafted, at 11, 12 overall. And now you're seeing RB10 available to you like where we're talking about here at like 25, 26, 27. It's a wild change. I think it's correct. But I think it's wild. So
that's what I want to say too. It's rational.
Yes.
Right. Like we've already poked the holes in the arguments for Stevenson and Hall and, Henry, we didn't say it, but he's old. Right. So it's rational. And that's why I don't want to. In terms of Gibbs, obviously, I mean, the Friday drafters are going to be taking their cues from the bare knuckle on Thursday night after that game. And
obviously,
of course, just sort of play it by that. It's funny, like the game script against the Chiefs, like you said, Theo, that could be 9 targets or 10. I mean, he could really rack that up if they're losing, but it might be like the most extreme example of that on their schedule. And then whoever they play next, it's David Montgomery week because they're not playing Kansas City. So I think Adam's probably right that he goes up based on his logic, but I also think there could be a real overreaction to Gibbs based on the fact that they're playing the Chiefs, depending on, if it goes the way you might expect.
100% there'll be overreactions to Thursday night. That's the like Amari Cooper 2 seasons ago was like the 5th overall pick.
Yeah.
He rose like based on that one game. So things are Vegas a lot of fun. You got to keep it level headed on those Friday drafts.
Last year, I want to say that in the bare knuckle, there was the Bills and the Rams. And remember Cam Akers didn't see the field in that game and nobody really understood that. I picked him, I think it was the 9th round of the bare knuckle. Who knows what that is. I didn't win, but had I had a good enough team, I mean, he was awesome in the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. You would have had to sit on it, but he was definitely the last 6 weeks hero. Well, at least one of them at the running back spot. Guys, let's flip the script here. I highly recommend everybody to go back and listen to the deep end from this week, the GOAT District from this week, and also First and 15 from this week, because we participated in a 350 draft. B-Bag, Batoba, Dio, Adesai, Chris Henderson, JD, Andrew Schellenberg, and myself, and Mike and Adam. So some really, really sharp drafters kind of sharing their process. And that was a really fun draft. You guys drafted out of the 12 hole. The 10 hole. You pushed Mark Andrews up to the 10 spot. I wanted to talk a little bit about, is Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews kind of the most lethal potential correlation play that you can build right now?
Mike, you want to answer that? He was your idea. He was your idea.
Well, we didn't get Jackson, but we were in position to at 403. He went at the turn though. Sure, right? There's definitely number one stacking potential there for those two guys. Jackson isn't always that much cheaper than Mahomes, Hurts, Allen. So sometimes at that back end though, that's where you're really staring at it. I love how we did it with Andrews, even though it wasn't really comfortable. ADP is 18 to 20 for him. But while I'm not someone who spends a lot of time trying to predict ADP outcomes, I mean, people are going to want to build around a tight end there in FFPC, and what's not to love? What would be the argument against Andrews having another great season? I mean, Flowers or Beckham, they want to throw more. That's not going to be bad for him.
Right.
So I think Andrews belongs in that range. And I mean, 203 is even above ADP. And I love that. So yeah, very optimistic for him. And I think it worked out, Adam, in that draft. I mean, we ended up with a receiver in round 2. I don't remember who it was, maybe Lamb. And then it was
Adams, I think.
Adams, right.
Adams, yeah.
Right. And then Hall, ETN, and then a few receivers. I like how we ended up there.
Yeah, I love how your build worked out. I love the number of your picks as well. But definitely don't want to give it all away, guys. Go listen to the deep end from this week, and Mike and Adam can kind of explain that and kind of how they built that team. But let's just talk about, Adam, the fundamental nature of selecting Mark Andrews. I think that he does a lot of really great things for you. Mike brings up the potential of the player, which is really the main reason you want to draft anybody. But I think in these sort of tight end premium formats, you don't have to play catch up at the position. You could go potential naked one tight end build. You could do a lot of different things when you use that sort of draft capital. Maybe talk about, how high you'd be willing to push Andrews up to and the kind of advantage he might give you.
Yeah, I love the idea of it. And in fact, I haven't told Mike this yet, but last night I had the 10 spot again. And I had a kind of a burst of energy. I got in the midnight draft and I had a burst of energy. And I said, you know what, let me go get Andrews, but let me see if I can push the envelope. And I ended up getting him in the second round. I started Garrett Wilson, Mark Andrews, Breece Hall, Lamar Jackson. So similar to what we did, was able to get Lamar to fall. But so last year, the stack that you needed to have was the Mahomes Kelce stack. It was more expensive than Andrews Jackson is this year. And everybody had it last year. But you needed it. You needed to have it last year. Lamar and Andrews are going to be cheaper this year. And not near as many people are going to have the stack. People will have it. It's very easy to get, like Mike has said. You can get Andrews at the 1-2 turn. You can get Lamar at the 3-4 turn pretty easily. But you're still not going to have as many people grabbing that stack. So I think if they end up smashing, Mark Andrews was the tight end 1 2 years ago. If Lamar's healthy and they're throwing the ball more, that could be the stack that you need to have. And so I would hate, especially with how difficult that 3-4 turn can be, I would hate to pass on like a can't miss guy like Lamar outside of injury to just try to go in a different route and have that be the stack you need to have and then just not taking it. Sometimes it's just simple, like just do the simple thing.
Yeah, and I'll push this back to you, Mike, but it's the arbitrage Mahomes Kelce play. And Mike, you bring up like the 4 wide receiver set and the speed of the Todd Monken offense, but Like that's you think that could be good for Andrews. I completely agree with you, but why don't you kind of share why?
Well, I mean, no specific reason, but everybody is more optimistic for their passing offense than last year or than the last few years. And I don't know why it would be logical at all to see how Andrews would not fit into that. You know, he's red zone is there. Everything is there. He's going to be 28. I'm fine with that. So, I mean, I would bet him even money. I shouldn't have to finish above Kelce this year. And, you know, you get to the third round. If you draft Kelce at like 3, you'll do okay. Maybe that's Mahomes there, which costs you at other positions. You know, it's just a little bit cheaper, like we've been talking about. And I don't know, like, isn't it possible that even Jackson's ceiling is higher than Mahomes with what he's able to do as a runner?
Yes.
So, you know, you're putting Garrett Wilson on those teams, or CeeDee Lamb, or AJ Brown, or Devontae Adams on those teams, and you're not getting any of those guys if you start with Kelce.
Yeah, let's talk about the challenges of the Kelce Mahomes start, because this is something I've talked about with Billy Muzio a lot lately. Mike, you do a ton of underdog. I do a ton of underdog. We probably each got a dozen Mahomes Kelce starts on underdog, but you see it continually, whether you're drafting in the main event, whether you're drafting in a 350, like any FFPC league, you're seeing it. I was in another format, an FFPC competitor last night, and somebody starts off with Travis Kelce at like the 9 or 10, and then they take Mahomes in the second round. So it's like, it almost seems like the law for Travis Kelce drafters that they have to take Mahomes. And I think it's kind of threading the needle. Adam, you bring up last year. Last year, Mahomes was a lot cheaper. Justin Herbert had steamed up to quarterback 2 in a lot of these drafts. You were able to get Mahomes considerably cheaper. Now you're having to use at least, like Mike, you bring up like the dream scenario where you get Mahomes in the third. If you're going to do it, a lot of times people are using those top 2 picks. How difficult is it going to be for you to win when you draft 2 guys from the same team? The correlation in the first and second round it seems to me like you're trying to thread the needle. Either one of you guys can take this one.
Well, you know, Adam has said about another question, people smarter than I, and I would answer that way about to this question. You know, like, I feel like I've been convinced without being able to detail the argument that receivers you're really gonna hurt, especially if you get one of those running backs we all like in round 3 that way. So I would never risk Mahomes in round 2 on a Kelce team, because I'd just be too scared that I would not get there at receiver. I would take Devontae Smith or Olave, you know, or even Higgins maybe in that scenario.
Yeah, I just really struggle to take a quarterback in round 2, because I like a lot of players there. Whereas, like, I think the advantage to taking an early quarterback is taking him in a spot where maybe it's a pocket of the draft that you don't really feel confident in. You don't really like. I'm like, you know what? I'll take the elite quarterback because I know outside of injury, he's going to hit. I like Saquon Barkley. I like Tony Pollard. I like Devonta Smith. I like T. Higgins. I don't love him, but, you know, there's some players there that I think can really, really help. And so to take that, to kind of waste my like wild card there on a quarterback that early to stack with Kelce. And listen, if you're taking Mahomes and Kelce in the first 2 rounds, they have to do what they did last year. And again, you know, with the age thing and just some bad luck, they never have bad luck there, but a little bit of bad luck, they could not do what they did. Now it's safe. Don't get me wrong. It's certainly safe. Outside of injury, they're not gonna bust, but I don't know. I just feel like there's other stacks, especially quarterback. I mean, listen, Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goedert. I mean, there's another great quarterback tight end stack for you. There's different ways to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it just, for me, it's the commonness of it. It's the combination of the commonness and also the draft capital. So for that reason, I'm probably out on it. I'll have a ton of it in underdog, and I think it's something if you're max entering, you don't want to walk away from it. But I think if you're doing only a handful of these, it's not really giving you as much of an edge as you think. I want to go back to, you know, we mentioned wide receivers a lot, and I went with AJ Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown out of the 12 hole of my only main event so far. It was a slow one, guys, but I went with those 2 guys and I love it. But last night I'm in a 350, and Billy Wazowski, who I think is one of the best drafters in the country, starts out from the 12 hole and he goes Amon-Ra St. Brown and AJ Brown. So I worry a little bit about the 12 hole. Like, I think that if you talk to to a bunch of drafters you respect, everybody likes that start from the 12 because we're exposed to so many potentially, high outcome players, whether it's the running backs that you mentioned, Adam, or the wide receivers we've discussed. What's your strategy from the 12, Adam? Do you just worry, like you're just trying to get max upside guys, trying to be as dangerous as possible? When do you start worrying about, trying to be unique?
So it's funny you bring that up. The fantasy pros I did late last night, pick 12, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I'm not that smart. I'm not that smart, guys.
I know. And then they came back around and went Najee Harris, Jahmyr Gibbs. That's a really sweet start to me, man. Jahmyr Gibbs the 3-4. I think it's a good point to bring that up too. Is that that it's kind of a receiver area there. Hey, if you had picked 12, how many times have you taken that combination of players? But I think that's where you get it. There's enough variance where you can move some things around. Plus, you'll get camp news. So I would, if you're at pick 12 a bunch, I would still just take the guys that you like there because you don't know how many times that they're going to fall. I'm a huge Garrett Wilson guy this year. So I take him a lot there. So I like them all. So I'm really mixing it up. So I don't necessarily find myself struggling that way. Last year, I did end up with a ton of Diggs Adams at that 1-2 turn, which was incredible all year until it actually mattered. You know what I mean? I had so many playoff teams with Diggs and Adams, and they just died at the end of the year. So it can be really good for you if it works, but they got to hit it at the right time.
How about you, Mike? What has been your preferred strategy from the 12 hole?
Adam said a lot of it. I don't feel like I can fail at 12 or even 11. I like 11 more because I like to play off what I think 12 will do as a draft plays out. But I don't think I can fail there. Like if I'm at 8 or 9, that's where I feel like I can fail with my first round pick. And in the second round, I'm going to get one of these guys that didn't get picked at 10, 11, 12. It's going to be the same thing. It's going to be Devontae Adams or it's going to be Barkley. I mean, you see Pollard go at the turn on underdog. You see Nick Chubb go at the turn on underdog. I just know, and if I'm at the end of a draft, I'm never reaching. It's always going to be any two of those guys. And it really can fluctuate by position too. I'll be in a Bijan Robinson mood one day and Garrett Wilson the next. I don't feel like I can fail. And at 3-4, that usually works out well enough also. The FFPC thing though, tight end is the problem. If you're drafting at the end, Andrews is definitely at the top of my list there because who is your starting tight end unless you really reach if you're drafting at 11 or 12 on FFPC? Like the first guy, if I remember the board right, that isn't a reach is Evan Ingram in like the 7th round. And, people like Evan Ingram, but at FFPC, I'm kind of generally afraid to have a team without a top tight end.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that George Kittle at the 3-4, if you want to go Kyle Pitts at the 3-4, like you do have to take them higher than ADP in order to ensure a tight end because you're not getting exposure to Waller. Hope maybe Goddard falls to you, but it's 5-12 Goddard is no safe bet. So
Waller's really the interesting sort of wild card in there. I think Theo, like maybe he should go higher than he does. The early camp stuff is outstanding on him, and maybe he is plan B without Andrews. We'll see if his ADP changes because I think there is like a really high ceiling there.
I think his ADP will change. I think that we're going to start seeing him drafted ahead of Kittle and ahead of Pitts a lot more often than we're seeing now because, I mean, he could have a 130 target season this year for the Giants and all of the buzz is positive. Like everybody, like yesterday they said Waller couldn't finish practice because Daniel Jones was throwing the ball to him too much every single time. So they wanted to let him a little rest and see some other guys. It's wild. The bounce back could happen. And Mike, you're very close to the Bills. And the last time we saw Brian Dable get a weapon that he traded for in an offseason, Stephon Diggs was drafted right around the same range as Darren Waller right now, in FFPC. And I don't think that there's obviously not a Diggs outcome, but I think in terms of Brian Dable's a guy that can really figure out how to use creative ways to get his main pass catcher the ball.
Yes, and he also doesn't have anybody else except for Barkley, who's a proven pass catcher on the team. He's got a lot of options. The 2020 narrative was be careful about receivers who are moving to new teams. So slow down on Diggs and Hopkins, who had gone to new teams, but Diggs led the league in catches and yards that year.
It's so funny. It's like the norms in fantasy football just completely go out the window because AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill, they all smash now. It's like we want Christian Kirk. We all want the guys on new teams. I think it's a fantastic, and all the rookies have smashed as well. So we you got to move with the times, guys. We got to move with the times in fantasy football. You mentioned, Mike, the difficulty you're having right now picking out of the 8 hole. Adam, you talked about your love of Garrett Wilson. Why not push Wilson up to the 8?
I think I've probably done that. I have Garrett Wilson. I'm not a projections guy. I trust a lot of the people who I think are smart. Obviously, you and Billy, a Player Profiler. There's a couple other sites that I really trust. I've got Garrett Wilson right with CeeDee Lamb as like my wide receiver, like 5, right behind Tyreek Hill. Like, I'm more than happy to take him there. I think the camp news is awesome on him. I'm watching him and Sauce Gardner go at it like dogs on the football field and I'm loving it. Iron sharpening iron. I'm thinking to myself, yo, chill out, Gary. You're going to get hurt. And sure enough, he pulls up with like a slight ankle sprain. I'm like, geez, Louise. So outside of injury, I think Rodgers loves him, and I think he's going to absolutely smash this year. So yeah, I'm fine taking him right there because like Mike said, you feel like you're reaching. At least reach for a guy that you really believe in, rather than just taking ADP.
I think just the general, and even if Garrett Wilson's not your guy, I think, Adam, you kind of hit on that, where I want to take a guy at 8 where I feel the most dangerous. Mike, the challenge is there. What has been your preferred strategy? Are you considering pushing Mandrews up to 8?
It would be Eckler, I think, because you still have that insane ceiling potential. I sort of still feel like they should sign a running back to go with him, or maybe Isaiah Spiller or somebody shows. But he's at where I end up, and we'll just get one of those receivers. Often makes it FFPC. This would be Andrews. I haven't picked in that range yet over there that I remember, but I don't know. Like I have a strange sort of, it's funny talking to you about this because I did a video on Diggs for you earlier in the offseason. I have a strange reluctance about him. It's not because of that he skipped a day of minicamp. It's not because of anything real, I guess. But I guess I just don't like him or A.J. Brown that much more than the next 4 or 5 guys. So Eckler, there is a gap for me there. And, I mean, he's just been so productive. That's what I'll usually do. But I don't love it.
Yeah, stick with that one because A.J. Brown, I've heard this argument a little bit. Last year, A.J. Brown had career highs in a number of categories, and most importantly was targets. That was what we always wanted out of Tennessee. And he got 140 targets ish last year in Philly. Now his ADP has been pushed up where you're having to consider him in the first round if you want him. If you get him at the 201, 202, that's like a gift. Does he have potential to increase his target numbers, Adam, or do you worry about this sort of being like a capped situation and maybe he's a little bit more of a is what he is guy rather than a league winner where we're drafting him?
Yeah, I don't see his targets going up. I mean, Devonta Smith might be better than AJ Brown. Can I just say that? I mean, with the draft capital, he's always been great. Comes from a big time college school and has been awesome his first 2 years in the NFL. He might be just as good or better than AJ Brown. So I don't see AJ Brown getting any more. If anything, I see them getting kind of closer to a 50-50 split. Devonta Smith last year, I think, was 25% target share. It's going to be tough for him to get that again unless AJ Brown comes down. But I still think AJ Brown, outside of injuries, is a safe pick there. I mean, he's in an explosive offense and all that stuff. If you're looking for a high upside, like, hey, this guy can finish in the top 3, I like Garrett Wilson more than that. I like, obviously, Tyreek Hill or CeeDee Lamb more for that. But I think for safety, I think AJ Brown's fine there.
Garrett Wilson, year 2, Odell Beckham, year 2. Mike, can you see it?
Sure. I mean, Adam's the flag bearer when it comes to Wilson on our team, but I get it, right? Aaron Rodgers. It is a little bit. What would be the argument against it? There's just a lot of unknown there with new team, new quarterback. Wilson's not on a new team, but almost every other receiver there is on a new team. And, how often will he throw to the running back? Is Hall healthy? What might Dalvin Cook mean to all of it? Everybody's talking up Conklin as a guy that Rodgers will sort of lean on, which, could be for touchdowns. I'm fine with Garrett Wilson, not at 8, but he's one of those guys that I think belongs where he goes a few picks later.
I want to talk about another tier of wide receivers that I think is giving people a little bit of pause. You have basically, you see the big, we'll call them like the big 14 or 13 wide receivers that go in the first 2 rounds of every draft. And if not, they get pushed up to the early 3rd. Then you have the T. Higgins, and then there's a couple of player gap, and then DK Metcalf is selected. But those 2 guys are, alphas and high touchdown upside kind of guys, still a little bit of youth. Then you get to this tier of wide receivers where it's somewhere between the end of the 3rd and let's call it the mid 4th, because I think Christian Watson's rising. You've got Keenan Allen, Calvin Ridley, Deebo Samuel, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, and Christian Watson. It's a cop-out to say I want to, I think they're all in the same tier, because we need to pick a winner here, guys. Which of these guys gives you the biggest edge, Adam, and which of these guys are you most into selecting here at ADP? You can give 2 names.
Yeah, it's funny because we don't stop podcasting like ever, right? We go all through the off season and everything. So like, my takes change a little bit from, February, March.
And I'll pause. I'll say that means you're doing the right thing, because you draft a lot and you podcast a lot, and you never want to dig your heels in.
So my answer changes from 6 months ago, but I'm really starting to get in on this Jaguars offense and Calvin Ridley. I love the idea of, and maybe I needed to see him out there. Maybe I needed to see that he was, because listen, last time we saw him full season wide receiver 3, awesome. The next year he had some mental health issues, so he took time away from football, and then he was the gambling. So it's like, let's see where he's at. And he looks great. He looks like he looks
ridiculous.
He looks insane. Oh, there's no pads on. You can see explosiveness though. And anyways, he looks fine. He's still in his prime. So I really like Calvin Ridley. The idea of, hey man, he's another guy. Going back to your question earlier, he could be a 2-3 turn guy come Friday night in Vegas or whatever. Like he's a guy creeping up. So that's a guy that I'm definitely going to start taking more of, because I think I got to catch up. I don't have a lot of shares of him.
It's a good,
Mike, where are you at on these guys?
That's a good case right there. I will say, so let's say, like we were just talking about, I'm drafting 11 or 12, and I've started with 2 of those receivers. The guy I would want next from that group is Watson.
Yeah.
I want the guys next that have the best chance of just being a grand slam. I don't think all those guys on that list really give you that. I don't think Amari Cooper gives you that kind of possible outcome. Now, if I've started with a running back, then I think maybe Amari Cooper is a better idea, because I think he's probably safer than Watson. But if you draft Watson and it sort of looks good in Green Bay, that's tremendous for you. And then I would put Jeudy next on that list, because I think there is the same potential. We talked about Kansas City earlier. I don't know if I have many Kelce Mahomes teams, but I have a lot of Kelce and Russell Wilson teams because of the week 17 point. And I don't want 2 quarterbacks from that same game in week 17. And I think so Denver, like I can certainly buy into the idea that they're a lot better. The argument's been made that Jeudy doesn't really deserve to go so much earlier than his colleagues in that receiver room, but I think he is the best of them. So that's another one where there is a chance for a huge year if they're good.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm into Watson. I'm into Jeudy a lot. Adam, I'm like you. I was on the take Christian Kirk later than taking Ridley, but good Lord, he looks like the guy hasn't stopped working out during his suspension, which you always kind of worry about. I don't remember Ridley being that physically imposing in Atlanta, but he looks the part. And I'll say, like, Mike, I love the argument for Christian Watson. That's a guy that's Billy Muzio's. Since Billy Muzio is a co-host of the Dominator, we'll give him a little hat tip. Great drafter. That's his most selected wide receiver in his portfolio. He's been hammering him in best balls. I'm really into Watson. I think, the tape doesn't lie, and I think we try to poke holes in guys. And I hate the whole argument, well, touchdown rate is unsustaining, because let's see those long touchdowns from other people where they completely run away from defenses like Tyreek Hill did when he was young. And Watson, I think his competition for targets right now is another second-year player and a rookie at the wide receiver. And then you have 2 rookie tight ends. And then you have Aaron Jones, who's, getting a little bit older at running back position. So I'm with you on Watson. It's a very interesting group of wide receivers. I think that I'm probably the least interested in Amari Cooper. I think that he's just, we've never seen him go over 130 targets, and the target competition has increased a lot in Cleveland. So it's definitely an interesting group of players to look at. Wanted to talk a little bit more about tight ends. We all play tight end premium, and the position is so important no matter where you play, because there's so many non-impactful players. So Mike, let's say you get shut out of the big two with Mandrews and Kelce. Who has been your preferred player to grab?
I like Freiermuth a lot. Where he's at in his career, third-year player, and some signs of optimism with the quarterback and just sort of the team. I think the coordinator situation is unfortunate, but Freiermuth did well. I have been on Okonkwo since last year. I drafted Okonkwo in tournaments last year as like a late round pick, as just an athlete with upside there. And I don't mind what's happened in Tennessee really for him. People point to how little usage he got last year. Like he wasn't on the field often enough, but that should change because he was good. Like when he was on the field, he was productive. Why wouldn't they sort of rational coaching, right? Sigmund Bloom, you want to hope that they kind of see what he was able to do and use him more. So I'm fine there. And I think there are some, and this has been said by many people, some fine options toward the end. Dawson Knox, I think, will still be on the field all the time for the Bills, even though they drafted Kincaid, who I know you love, Theo. I like the idea of him, but I'm not so much on him for his rookie season. Been talking a lot about that here in Buffalo. Hunter Henry is also somebody at the very end of drafts that might be pretty good. Noah Fant as well. So there's value late. You just have to kind of get a little bit lucky with the one or ones you pick.
Adam, how about you? Are you diving into like the middle class tight ends if you miss out on the early ones, or are you waiting to try to pick the low end tight end twos and really punt the position entirely? I think Adam, there is.
I have a lot of Travis Kelce, to be honest with you. This season, whenever he slips, and I never have a top pick. So sometimes I'm getting him at like 7 or 8, and I'm happy to do that. But if I don't get him, normally I'll try to get whatever tight end lasts from that second group. I know you're talking about missing if you miss these guys, but like whoever falls, if it's Goddard or if it's sometimes it's Pitts, sometimes it's Waller. So usually I'm taking whatever I'll wait and try to time it so I can get the last guy in that group. And if that doesn't work, or even if that does work, you got to take a second tight end. I really like Higbee. Higbee could be the number 2 receiver there for the Rams. I can't believe I'm saying this too, but Dalton Kincaid is a guy. I know I don't do the rookie tight end thing, but he's a guy that we're keeping an eye on in Buffalo. Like Mike said, if he's lining up out of the slot, he's not playing to tight end. So he's a guy that I like taking when I can get him at like tight end 14, 15 as my tight end 2. I really like doing that. If
I may self-promote for a minute. I did an interesting half hour yesterday on WGR, 5 to 5:30 Eastern on Kincaid. You can find that at the Odyssey app. And here's the point. 10 rookie tight ends in the Super Bowl era have caught 50 passes in a season. I mean, he's in the tight end room. I know it's a slot receiver, Cole Beasley. He's in the tight end room. They have a tight end on the team who's fine. So if he catches 50 passes for like 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, it's kind of historic for a rookie tight end to do that. It's also 3 for 30.
Right.
It can be sort of historically good and a huge bust in fantasy at the same time, Kincaid.
Yeah.
And by the way, for you guys, and I know we're getting late here, anybody a little scared about the early Kyle Pitts, how he looks and his injury?
I didn't like seeing the way that he had the brace on and how he was moving. And I think you always have to take that with a grain of salt, because somebody might have said, hey, Kyle, go 70% speed. Let's just see how you get out of this break. But I definitely don't love seeing it. We need Kyle Pitts this year based on where he's getting drafted. And then certainly just to take it to Dynasty, this is a polarizing season for him. I didn't love seeing it.
Yeah. And it reminds me, But again, it wasn't even like he was going slow. Looked like he was like limping as he was running. It reminds me of Dobbins last year in that one video we saw where he would look like he was limping. And then sure enough, like they put him on the pup. And then even when he got back, they didn't put him on the pup. He got kind of tweaked it. And even when he came back, he looked like he was dragging his leg the whole season. I don't like to see it. And the reports out of camp today is they're really struggling to convert deep passes in training camp. And for whatever reason, they love to run him on these deep routes. I'm definitely nervous.
Mac Hollins looks like a character from The Program. If you have not seen that movie, you might want to watch it. But that might be a guy that you're letting him know, hey, they might be testing today, Mac. Guy looks like a warrior today. So, guys, wanted to quickly pick your brain here on these RB2s. Let's specifically leave the 4th round running backs out of there. So, like, I don't want to the Najee Harrises don't really enter our equation. Let's make the cutoff Ken Walker. So I'm looking at Cam Akers, Miles Sanders, J.K. Dobbins, Alexander Mattison, Rachaad White, Dameon Pierce, James Conner, and DeAndre Swift. All of those guys are currently going somewhere in the middle of the 5th to the end of the 6th. Sometimes you get Swift in the 7th. And hell, we'll throw David Montgomery up into this mix and Javonte Williams. They're rising. Who of this wide swath of running backs have you been most comfortable drafting, if any?
For
Adam.
me,
go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Mike. Go, you take
For
it.
me, it's really been Pierce more early in the offseason because I think there's a potential that their offense is just decidedly better. I know with a rookie quarterback could happen, and I like the player so much. Dobbins, I think, is fine too. My guess on Dobbins is that he's not in because of money, and he's maybe like Jonathan Taylor trying to see where it can take him. Everybody has said like there's a lack of leverage. He hasn't done enough. That's probably right, but I'm sort of assuming he's healthy, and I don't mind him, especially with stacking potential in that range.
Yeah, I mean, it's the guy's played 23 games. It's not his fault. He's very talented, but yeah, there's certainly that would be a weird one. So you would say, Mike, those two guys make you feel the most dangerous with your builds when you select them?
Yeah, it's a tough word to use for Pierce. That's fair. But there's nothing dangerous about Montgomery, and I don't think Swift either. I'm not even sure Swift is good. So, yeah, that's right. Dobbins is dangerous. I mean, if Dobbins is healthy, that's amazing. And he's able to produce for Baltimore. That could be amazing. But, right. I mean, Rachaad White, is he good enough? Is his team going to be not terrible? Do they bring someone else in? Too many question marks for me.
Yeah, I'll say Miles Sanders has gotten steamed up a little bit, but there's some positive vibes on him being a 3-down back. Cam Akers is a guy that I've selected a lot because I think he goes after Dobbins. I have liked Cam Akers, and then we selected Dameon Pierce the other night. I think Dameon Pierce, like I agree with you, Mike, I can't really use the word dangerous, but he is a second-year back with explosiveness, and he could be the focal point of that offense, which there's something to be said for that. I do think they'll be an effective team running the football. Adam, who are the guys that are your favorites to draft out of this group?
Yeah, this is why this is the running back dead zone, right? Because there's just so many positive things to say about him, but then so many question marks. I mean, Cam Akers, I was out on, then I was trying to get, okay, I'm getting a little bit more back in on him, and then they say he put on like 15 pounds, and like I never want my running backs to get gaining weight, even if it's muscle. Like I don't know that whenever they lose weight, that makes me feel good. Yet go back to the years like Le'Veon Bell, he lost like 15 pounds one year, and then he was insane for the next 2 or 3 years. So that makes me worry. J.K. Dobbins is a guy for me that I've been drafting. I draft every year, and it has never worked out. But this year, I'm going to be back on him again. Going in the 5th round, that offense is going to be explosive. He is holding out for money or whatever you want to call it. I mean, and he also might want some time. I mean, he's a veteran at this point, right, guys? And he's like 4 years in. Maybe he doesn't want to show up to training camp and kind of wear his body out. But I do like J.K. Dobbins. But I think the highest upside guy here might be DeAndre Swift. I mean, I'm not even saying he's good, but he's on a team that's insane. Jalen Hurts is a running quarterback, but he throws to the running backs more than you would think from a scrambling kind of running quarterback position. Not if, but when, Rashad Penny gets hurt, Swift could have this entire backfield. Now I know that they've got a bunch of running backs there that I like, but I think Swift, if he minds his P's and Q's and the coaching staff likes him enough in that offense, he could be a top 7 or 8 running back for fantasy this year. So if I'm taking a running back there, I'm shooting for the moon. Normally, if I'm taking running back in this range, it's after I have a bunch of receivers. So, hey, give me that high upside running back.
Yeah, and DeAndre Swift, a Philadelphia legendary high school player, returns home. I think that's kind of a cool narrative. I think he was player of the decade. They do like a Pennsylvania player of the decade. That's how good he was. Guy, and Olamide Zacchaeus' high school teammates, so they get like a weird little reunion there in Philly this year.
Big time.
Guys,
you know.
So we're at an hour. I got to ask you one question here. So the other day, Billy Muzio and I were on with Sean Corner, and I looked up my underdog exposure to Nico Collins, and I'm at like 27% Nico Collins. So sometimes we get in this routine of drafting guys over and over and over again. You can take this to any format you want, Mike. Who's one guy that you have way too much of?
Kendre Miller is my number one most owned player on Underdog, like 28%. I was drafting last night, and I have had the thought, like, all right, stop with Kendre Miller. But there was a cool clip of him yesterday running in a drill, and who knows with Kamara in multiple ways. And so he was just like the perfect guy for me in this draft. I mean, I probably had Godwin and had a correlation thing with Miller and running back 4 on a team. Like it's round 13 maybe. A lot of times it's just sort of the board looks like he is easily the best choice. So I picked him again. I don't know. I mean, it's all been said already. Like, he's an interesting prospect. Maybe that's a team that sort of looks good offensively out of the box with new people. But you say too much of, that's my number one guy, and I have no idea what I'm getting.
Too much of can be a good thing, guys, as long as it's not too much of in like I feel like double-digit rounds. Go for it, Mike. And I will say Kendre Miller, just 21-year-old, and the other guys are 28. We've seen this story a million times in the NFL. We saw it with Kamara. Where are you at, Adam? Give us a guy. Give us one of your stands.
I'll say quick. My late guy that I have take ever never draft is Hunter Renfrow. I don't have anything other than I think he's really good, and there's some opportunity from there. Waller's gone. There's not a ton of competition there.
And he could get moved too, Adam.
I would love for him to get moved. That would be.
Where would you like to see him go?
The Bills. That's Cole Beasley, baby. Let's go. I'd love to see him here in Buffalo somewhere. I think whoever trades for a guy like Hunter Renfrow is going to want a guy like Hunter Renfrow on their team. So they're going to use him. But a guy that kind of more like matters here in these drafts is, I'm taking so much Rashad Bateman. I think I can chill on that. They got the injury and the pup and all that stuff. I think I still want pieces of that offense. So I'm just gonna transition it over to like maybe some Odell Beckham or maybe some Zay Flowers to try to get my shares up on those guys, because I still want the pieces of this offense, but the Bateman thing's kind of making me nervous. It's
tough. Like, your most owned guys are almost always late. I'm looking at that list, and like Mac Jones is my most owned quarterback. What happened there? Like, why? I don't even know who likes Mac Jones, but it's never going to be like Kupp, because you just can't control that. Detroit would be my vote for Renfrow.
That would be a good one, Mike. That would be a nice one, but it's probably going to be the New York Giants, because they want every slot receiver in the entire world. Guys, this was a lot of fun. I could legitimately talk football with you guys for 4 hours. Mike, and let everybody know where they can find you.
I will be talking football for 4 hours today on WGR in Buffalo on the Odyssey app. Once again, AUDACY. I'm on weekdays with the Bulldog 3 to 7 Eastern, 5 days a week, and then Bills postgame. And Adam and I, as you mentioned earlier, do our Deep End podcast mostly on Tuesday nights. This week we have Pros versus Joes coming up, and it'll be a great month of August with so many drafts happening, and just what a year.
In Vegas, guys. We're in Vegas in like 35 days.
And Vegas and the bare knuckle. That's right.
That is incredible. Adam, let everybody know where they can find you.
So obviously I'm on the Deep End with Mike. And I also work for Full-Time Fantasy. You can find me doing podcasts for them over at Full-Time Fantasy in the FFWC Fantasy Football World Championship. So that's a lot of fun over there. And listen, I know you may not ask me, Theo, but I've got the Jackson Smith and Jigba finishing top 36 receiver. I hear you ask everybody out. I got to get in on it.
People want to get on Billy's good side or something. I have a $350 bet with our own Billy Muzio, and he gave me such a low bar. It's Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's going to finish like wide receiver 28. He's such a talented player. I have so many outs here. Mike, where are you at on my bet?
I'll root for you.
Thank you, Mike. Do you think it's a good bet?
I don't know. I mean, you got to love the player, but there are two other really good receivers on that team. Plus, they love to run it, and they've got two good running backs. So that's a close one for me.
It's the life finds a way argument here, guys. Talent rises to the top. Will Dissly will not hold back my Jackson Smith and Jigba, Mike.
No,
he will not.
No,
guys, this was so much fun. Make sure you tune into the Deep End every single Tuesday night right here on Player Profiler YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the Deep End podcast, and make sure you're tuning into the Dominator every single week. Next week it'll be Billy Muzio and Matt Kelly. A lot of fun today, guys, and everybody have a wonderful weekend.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.